Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. So happy that you're here. And let me turn on my video. Okay, welcome, welcome, welcome. So, don't open your Haggadahs yet. Don't open your Haggadahs yet. A big welcome to our singing friends, our dancing friends, people from work, people from the National Puzzlers League, from our Passover alerts list, our synagogue, other synagogues, cantors, our families, people we don't even know, as well as our regulars who are supposed to join us physically. You're all part of our family now. And a note about my family. I've got cousins from Pittsburgh and Florida and Rhode Island, my sister in Arizona. They've joined us, all joined us for this evening. My love for Passover developed sitting with them at my grandparents' table. I never knew then what my passion for Passover would turn out to be. We've been written up in the New York Times. We had a film crew from PBS right here. And I started these different each year seders in graduate school 47 years ago for friends. I never had anybody from my family. I can't express how pleased I am that we can share this Seder together. It's very heartwarming for me, and this is a silver lining of the coronavirus. Now, lots of these virtual Seders happened last night and tonight. I'm so happy that you decided to join ours. I am certain a few things are going to go wrong. I urge you to be patient, to be understanding. We'll try to be good-spirited. Now, settings for you. By this time, I think you've all gotten them, but I just want to say, you want to be full screen if you can. Look for the speaker view or screen share. You want to mute your microphone. Well, your microphone will be muted. And if you have a laptop, it might be a little better experience if you do that. We are recording this for those people who couldn't join. I'm going to upload this for them. And if you want the link, let me know. Just send me an email after the holiday. We will unmute everybody for some of the easy blessings so that we can hear ourselves doing them together. Now that we've started the Seder, we can't answer our phone. If you're having problems, don't call or text us. Put your question in the chat. That's a little option at the bottom of your options in the bottom of your screen, the Zoom window, and watch it. One of our friends is monitoring it. He and others will try to help you. So at the start of the Seder, please reserve the chat for any technical problems. Later on, we're going to use the chat for some interactions that we normally would have here at the Seder. Now about food. After the Karpas blessing, which is close to the beginning, you can snack. Eat anytime you want. I'm not watching you. Hunger should not be the 11th plague. By the way, I apologize. We're not going to have the very best sound for music. These sorts of conferencing systems are optimized for voice. We did the best we could in terms of the various settings during our many, many, many dry runs. So I apologize, the music is not going to be too great, but we're still going to enjoy it. Now, in my Passover prep talks, I always recommend changing the scene. When you and your family guests come, they realize that tonight really is going to be different. Of course, the coronavirus has made that bloody obvious in ways that none of us could have expected. At my Seders, we always have posters around the walls, on the walls, where I try to envelop us with a changed environment. So let me show you what we have. So we have cartoons, and we've got ancient Haggadahs, blow-ups of ancient Haggadahs, some posters associated with the theme, which you'll find out later. There's an immigrant postcard, and we've got other things associated with the theme here, 2 Yiddish lectures by Ben-Gurion, some more cartoons, Haggadahs, lots of other things. Let me switch around here. And so this way, everything around the room is relating to something associated with the Seder or to make sure that people feel that this is a different night, and we try to envelop everybody this way. Now, what?
You have to mark white out, 146.
Okay. So let me show you in more detail what some of those things look like. So we've got a gold rush ad from the 1850s and the first Jewish mayor of Portland, Oregon, and there's that immigrant postcard. and the lectures by Ben Gurion, and here's a Purim festival, and some dry goods store, and Waco, Texas rabbis, and Adra kosher wine, and Moses, Southern Matzah's bakery, and much, much more. The thing that I'm really most proud of finding is that this is a Yiddish map of the United States. And for those of you who can read the Yiddish, you'll see the states and the rivers and the mountains. If you read Yiddish, some of it is rather, rather odd. So that is what we have around us. These are samples of some of the things that our guests would have seen. And behind us, back here, is that map of the United States in Yiddish, which is really, really unusual. Don't open the Haggadah yet. Time for a surprise song. Okay, so let me switch again. So enjoy this and sing along. Yes. Wait, I'm sorry, hold on. Here's the first of my things. Okay, there we go. Come on, okay, there.
We are happy you've joined us this evening. We're so happy you've joined us this evening. The full moon is high and the Seder is nigh. So sit back and relax while we give Zoom a try.
Oh, what a wonderful feeling. Oh, what a fine holy day. We hope this Seder's appealing to all both near and away.
To the folks who are Zooming our Seder, we are showing this COVID invader that life does go on while we're stuck in our home. So stay close to your laptop and please sing along.
Oh, what a wonderful feeling.
Oh, what a fine holy day.
We hope this Seder's appealing to all both near and away. Oh, what a fine holy day. I was listening to all of you. You were all wonderful.
I messed up.
Okay, so I almost always start my Seders with an introductory question. Sometimes it relates to the theme. When we discussed the Inquisition, it was, if things got bad, would you leave your home for the unknown? But often it's something else. What's your earliest Passover memory? Talk about a person that you had an influential effect on your life. What have you done this past year that was new for you? In the Seders that I develop, I try to teach something, exploring a topic while having a lot of fun. Often I use the songs and story of a famous musical and find connections in that musical to the Seder experience. We are doing that tonight. Don't open your Haggadahs yet. We usually have lots of puzzles and games, friendly competition. Big apologies, we are not doing that tonight because of the constraints on our virtual Seder. I'm very sad about that, but I hope tonight will be enjoyable, educational, and a unique experience for you anyway.
It's not like you have anything else to do, you know.
Okay, that's true. Don't open your Haggadahs yet. This is not necessarily the best Seder that I've ever run. Randi wanted me to do that since we have our largest ever audience. There won't be any fireworks. There won't be any magic. I've done that before, right? There won't be any Egyptian tombs. Done that. The house won't be outfitted like an airplane. We're not dressing up like Queen Isabel and King Ferdinand. We won't be roasting a sacrificial lamb. No burning bushes in the fireplace. We won't even have fun with the plagues. It's a little too real this year. The pandemic has given us a deeper understanding, all of us, of what a plague is all about. Well, we do have a couple frogs, but that's not the same. There won't even be an Afikomen hunt. Well, actually, that's not true. This will simply be one of my ordinary themed Seders, the one I'd previously written for this year. It may not be the best, it may just be okay. Now, some of the earlier songs that we're going to do in the Seder won't be familiar to probably about 98% of you, but join in anyway. And when we get to some of the songs that you do know, sing louder. It'll be lots of fun. Don't open your Haggadah yet. Okay.
אוקלהומה שם הרוח טסה בשדות, בשיבולים הזהובות על כנפי הרוח הן נעות.
What's that doing here? Well, we're going to find out later. In the traditional Seder, we talk about our ancestors being enslaved and persecuted. We have an exodus, we cross a punishing desert, and we enter the promised land of Eretz Israel. Of course, for many of us, a more modern exodus refers to our ancestors leaving Eastern Europe. It's pogroms, persecutions, and poverty, crossing the desert of a treacherous ocean, often in fourth-class steerage, and entering the promised land, the Golden Medina, that we now enjoy. Tonight, we're going to explore the early years of starting the new state of Jewish America. Now, you may open up your Haggadah. When some of us think of Jews in America, I have to admit, including me, we imagined financiers, comedians, entertainers, actors, CEOs, and the like. And it's always been like that. The first time I had cold water dumped on my head, I was giving a presentation at a synagogue in Western New Jersey, and they showed me pictures of their first congregants, Jewish dairy farmers. Dairy farmers, like the Israeli pioneers? And I thought of my own grandparents, they were fruit peddlers. When what you and I see today is nothing like what the first generation of Jews in America has found. Now, I want to remember people who have died this past year, people who have been to our past Seders. So first of all, Martin's mom, another friend, Rebecca Levine, and I'm sure many of you have more. Also, one of our very closest friends died from the coronavirus last week. We went to a virtual funeral, and my God, it was awful. Our hearts go out to everybody who is suffering right now, all around the world. So let's have a moment of silence. Try to remember somebody who's no longer with us, or offer a prayer for recovery for somebody who's on the brink of life, or both. Okay, don't eat any snacks yet, not until Karpas, but do pour your own wine. We're going to have the Kiddush very soon. Now, the first Jews to come to America sat down at a Seder much like this. Really? Well, maybe in prior years. And sanctified their holiday by reciting Kiddush, practicing traditional rituals, and telling an ancient story. Tonight, let's tell their story. In the beginning, our ancestors in Europe were slaves of economic oppression, religious persecution, and restrictions on livelihoods and more. They were fleeing the long-lasting effects of the Inquisition. Now, the first wave. The first Jew to arrive in America might have been Elias Lagarde, a French Sephardi who came on the HMS Abigail in 1621 as an indentured servant. Elias was hired to teach the colony how to grow grapes for wine, naturally. So let's have Kiddush in honor of Elias. Make sure you read the footnotes. There's some fun stuff there. So we're going to say, here's my plan. We're going to say the Borei Pri Hagafen all together. So I'm now unmuting you.
Unmuted.
Be quiet until we start the and then I will mute you again, or I text mute us all.
And the loudest appears.
The major and
Really loud, maybe they'll hear us.
for the Shehechianu. So
Put our picture on. I run away.
if those of you who are talking, you want to talk, we start the Borei Pri Hagafen.
Is that Laura?
All across the country, Borei Pri Hagafen. Ready?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech
And now I switch.
Drink?
No,
We don't
don't
drink
drink yet. Don't drink yet. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'chab. Sorry, asher bachar banu mikol am. V'ramanu mikol atzon v'kiddishanu b'mitzvotam v'titen lanu Adonai Eloheinu b'ahava modim l'simcha chagim uzmanim haset l'sason et yom chag hamatzot hazeh zaman chirotenu merka kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim Mitzrayim is Egypt. Kivanu bacharta, yotanu kedashta mikol hamim. Umoadei katshecha b'simcha b'sason hinchatanu. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. And now we're going to do the Shehechianu, but wait a second, because I should have done it on the screen share. Screen share here. Not yet, not yet. Okay. Okay, so that's that. And now, the Shehechianu, are we all? No, we're not. Okay, so everybody together, Shehechianu.
Well, last night I could hear it on my computer.
Now we
Lean
drink.
to the left.
That was great.
Yes, that was great. So, blessed are you who has granted us life and sustenance and the internet and permitted us to reach this season. We are very thankful. Even though we are apart, we can share this experience together. Observance of Passover has always evolved in response to historic events, so this is not new. Even during the Holocaust, Jews tried and had seders. So I want to give my thanks in terms of thankfulness to Randi, who puts up with me and helps me enormously with things like this, and many other things as well. Okay, washing the hands. So I'm going to wash on behalf of everybody. And in the chat, I would like you to send thoughts about how this ritual of washing has additional meaning right now. How will you look at washing hands in the future? So if you had been messaging people privately, choose to everyone, so we have that. And now I'm going to wash on behalf of everybody. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear everyone. I will wash again later.
Are you supposed to sing it twice?
That's why I'm going to do it twice later. Okay. All right, get the karpas out. Our immediate ancestors were merchants selling whatever they could get their hands on. It's likely that they were marketing, it's not likely that they were marketing fresh fruits and veggies. Most of the early successes were in dry goods stores, but we can imagine that they might have helped some farmer along the way get his parsley to market. The salt water tonight represents the hardship of ocean voyages of those early settlers. So take the parsley and, thank you, dip it in the salt water, and let's say it privately with yourselves, everybody. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri ha'adamah. Blessed are you, creator of the fruits of the earth. You may now partake for as many snacks as you want. If you want to have dinner, I'm not watching you. So now we're going to break the middle matzah. And you're going to do that?
Yes.
We're going to hide the Afikomen later. Now, we're going to break the middle matzah. Put in the chat thoughts about how the issue of brokenness is relevant to what we're experiencing now. If you have any thoughts about that.
You have to wrap it up.
Now, I'm not going to hide the Afikomen right now for reasons that may not be obvious, but I will do that a little bit later. So, halachma. This is the bread of affliction, which our impoverished forefathers ate in the lands of Europe, Iberia, Russia, Poland, Austria, Hungary, Germany, Lithuania, Romania, Ukraine. Let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who are needy come and celebrate Passover. At present, we are here. You are there. Next year, may we all be in Israel. At present, we are slaves and in quarantine. Next year, may everyone everywhere be free and able to go wherever they want. Second cup of wine is poured, and we have the Manish Tanah. So Why is tonight different from all other nights? There's at least 40 ways that tonight is different from all other nights. So I'm gonna sing the melody that most of us know, most of us are familiar with. Sing along with me. I'm not gonna do any of the repeats, so it's gonna zip along. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot. Hold on one second. I do have it here. Okay. So here we go. Okay, here we go. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot. Shebechol halelot anu ochlin chametzu matzah. Halayla ze kulo mahatzah. Shebechol halelot anu ochlin she'ar yirakot. Halayla ze maharor. Shebechol halelot en anu mapilim afilu pam echad. Halayla ze shetei ve'amin. Shebechol halelot anu ochlin ben yoshvin u'ben mesubin. Halayla ze kulo mesubin. And on your screen, you can have a little bit of information about where that melody came from. Came from an oratorio performed in Haifa and was forgotten almost instantly. So back to us. There we go. Okay, so tonight we have a translation from the African nation of Togo. Last year, we heard, those of us at our Seder here, heard Kwadwo Bedra's story as he continues to seek asylum in the United States from political persecution in his home country. He's currently working long hours in Long Island. Kwadwo's friend back in Togo, Fali, speaks Tem, and here's a sample. So there are 300,000 people who can understand that. It's probably the first time he'd ever talked about matzah. Now, recently I obtained a very, very rare language. I'm very proud of this one. It's Ainu, which is Japan's indigenous language. It only has 10 native speakers left. The person speaking is not one of the native speakers, but he's a linguist who loves learning languages, as you'll see in a second. The Ainu is a very interesting language. It's a language isolate, like Basque. It has no relationship to the languages that surround it. So Basque has no relationship to the other languages of Europe. Ainu has no relationship, no structural relationship, linguistic relationship to Japanese. So it's a very interesting phenomenon. Let's listen to that little sample.
Hemantaksu tananchikar uneno somuang, oya anchikar opitatura, tane pakno kesanchikar kina, arosoika somu woro au koruka, tananchikar anakne tusuine woro aurue. This is Seshmomase speaking Ainu from Saitama, Miyashiro, Japan. Thank you very much. Hop up, hop up.
So he's from Saitama, Japan. He ended his translation when he sent it to me with Sei gesund. When I said, what, does everyone in Japan know Yiddish? And he says, for was nicht. So his boss is teaching him Yiddish. It's really amazing to hear Yiddish with a Japanese accent. Okay, so here we have a couple others. And we switch over again. So those are the recent additions. So many of you know, almost all of you know, I hope, that we've been collecting translations of the 4 questions for 35, 40 years, something like that. I think almost everybody out there in television land already has this book. I'm so delighted that many of you have gotten it. And I want to show you some of the fun ones that, if you haven't ever heard them, they're really cute to listen to. Okay. So this is Shakespearean. It's a Shakespearean sonnet. You can speak along, sing along.
Look from friend to friend and ask of them why dark of night is different to us on this occasion, such that brings us here.
Now we jump to
when
the
time
third
is of the
paragraph.
norm, we eat the herbs that fill our garden beds with no regards to sweet or sour. This night we apply only those whose bitterness doth remind us the somber tenor of the hour.
And we have a representation of a valley girl. And this is a cute little girl from about 10 years old. I love listening to her. This is probably everybody's or close to everybody's favorite translation.
Like, why is this night like totally different from like all other nights? It's like the rest of the time we eat this red fattening bread stuff or crackers, but like tonight we eat only gnarly thin stuff.
Okay, now I'm going to play you the Klingon. Klingon is a story about getting it that's rather amazing. The person that wrote many of the parodies that we're going to sing tonight, her son is a Klingon expert, and he worked at my company. There was a story about him, and I asked him to translate it. I started speaking to his mother at the choir that we're part of, and another guy overhears the conversation. He says, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I've been asking people to translate the 4 questions." He said, "Well, I've been doing this for the past 17 years. So the two of us met because of Klingon. Okay, now a very special one. And now, nope, don't play yet. So many years ago, a friend of ours said, "I know you do some really cool stuff at your Seder. I do a really good impersonation of someone who's famous. I want you to record me." And at my Seder, many years ago, a couple of you, I think, were at that Seder, I surprised everybody. I said, "We have a special visitor from Disney Enterprises," and they sent this tape. Where else do you get to hear a Hebrew-speaking Donald Duck? Okay, now we have our first song. We heard a little snippet of it at the beginning, and you're now ready to hear a little more of it.
לעומר שם הרוח חסה בשדו, והשמימולים הזהובות על כנפי הרוח הן נעות. לעומר מלכו עם ילדתי אשת, ויחדיו בשקט מחבר, ברקיה נשר מסתובב, כבר שליבנו שייך, זו המולדת פרח, וכשנקרא אמרנו שלבד קרה ויפה, Oklahoma, Hebrew lyrics from the Camp Ramah in Wisconsin production of 1974. The translation might have been by David Mann or someone else.
So there are a lot of virtual Seders happening around the world. This is the only one where you're going to hear Hebrew Oklahoma. Now, why are we playing this? For those of you who missed the beginning, we played a little snippet of it. Why are we playing this? When our dear friend Robin Schulzen wrote for us several parodies based on the musical Oklahoma, the seeds for tonight's Seder began to sprout. Then a local museum in Philadelphia, shout out to Philly, exhibited early Jewish migration in America. Why not enjoy the songs and story of the Wild West and tie it to how the Jews ended up in the Wild West and elsewhere? Finally, when New Jersey cantor Joel Kaplan relayed an early Camp Ramah production of Oklahoma in Hebrew, the puzzle pieces dropped into place. So now I'm going to hide the Afikomen, and we're going to switch back to this again. Okay. And while I hide the Afikomen, I'm going to entertain you with some videos. While you watch the videos, I want you to work on this quiz. Thinking of early Broadway musicals and films about the Wild West, list as many as you can. However, Oklahoma came out in 1955, so no web searching is allowed, and that's the cutoff date for early. So what we have here are going to be versions of Oklahoma in popular TV shows.
A tribute to the land of the rising sun.
Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain. Right show. Oklahoma every night. My honey lamb and I sit alone and hot and watch the hunt, making lazy. Hey, listen, guys, I think it's a mistake here. And when we say,
Star ready.
I am ready.
Okay, places please. It's magic time. Places please. And ready, quiet down, and roll camera. Stay.
Oklahoma, take one.
And action.
Hey, Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain.
Hold it, cut. But you sang the wrong thing. You see, you sang Oklahoma, and you're supposed to sing Oklahoma. And here we go. And roll camera.
Oklahoma, take two.
Cut. Forgetful, you did it again. You sang Oklahoma, and the song is called Oklahoma. Oh, Oklahoma.
I forgot.
All right.
Oklahoma.
Places, please. Quiet down. And here we go. And roll camera. Hey.
Oklahoma, take three.
Well, you sang the wrong thing. This time you sang what you sang? You sang See that? See that? Oh. See the O right there? Oh. What's the thing? Oklahoma. Oklahoma.
Well, why didn't you say so?
Oklahoma, take four.
Wait. He sang Oklahoma. He did it right.
Yeah, I know, Kermit, I know. But the last three takes took so long, it's time for lunch.
Lunch?
Okay, well, we're done up by the pigsty. Try not to make a mess.
Hope they don't have hay again.
You hope they don't have hay again.
Oh, what is she like? No, that made her throw up. Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping and the waving wheat and sure smells sweet when the wind comes right behind the rain. Making lazy circles in the sky. We all and the light
I'm just a girl who can't say no. I'm in a terrible fix.
Well, don't say I'm warned you. I've laid it on the line to you time and time again. This is it. I'm going to give you a damn good thrashing.
Can't be frizzy and quaint. How can I be what I ain't? I can't say no.
Okay, so I hope, so to speak, okay, so to speak, nice joke, right? Haha. So for those of you out in television land, see how many of these you got. This is the answers to the Wild West quiz. So the shows, the Broadway shows, Annie Get Your Gun was in 1946, Paint Your Wagon was in 1951. There were a bunch of films. So it was a very popular theme in the 30s and 40s and the 50s as people got interested in the Wild West. Girl of the Golden West, Destry Rides Again, Go West, Young Lady, Belle of the Yukon, Annie Get Your Gun, the movie, Calamity Jane, and Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. You can tell me in the chat if you got all of them right. I don't
They
think
all were chatting with each other, giving each other the answer.
Okay. All right. So now we have the first song on the topic of the 4 questions. So even if you don't know the melody, very romantic song in the actual play. Not a romantic song in the Seder. So these all were written by our dear friend Robin Schulzen for this Seder. We don't eat bread tonight, eat better herbs instead. And now we scratch our heads. People, we say this is strange. We did our veggies twice. We lean instead of sit. We can't make much sense of it. People, please say why this change. We now commemorate shedding our toil and our chains. So here's how we celebrate. Now here's to freedom regained. Oh, you were all wonderful. And you'll get better with more wine. So, Magid, number 2, chapter 2. We continue with our story. The first wave continued. After the first Jew in 1621, by 1649, there were only 4. One included Solomon Franco, a Sephardic rabbi from Holland, who moved from New Amsterdam to Boston. Franco was a scholar and worked as an agent for the Dutch, as a Dutch merchant. When the Portuguese forces in 1654, still driven by the Inquisition, took Recife from the Dutch in Brazil, it was imperative for Jews wanting to leave Europe to find other new homes. Amsterdam's Jewish leadership sent Jacob Barsamson to determine if New Amsterdam might be appropriate. Jacob was followed by 23 Jews from Recife, escaping the Portuguese. Finally, we had a minion. Again, read the footnotes. New Amsterdam. Okay, so we are going to give honor to each of the states that we talk about and cities. This is a historic seal for New Amsterdam. The colonial governor was none too happy with the influx. Peter Stuyvesant attempted to have them expelled. These very repugnant, hateful enemies and blasphemers of the name of Christ should not be allowed to infect and trouble this new country. Oh. However, several influential Jews were directors of the Dutch West India Company and interceded on behalf of the refugees. These Jews may travel and trade and live and remain there as long as they are supported by their own nation. You, Peter, will now govern yourself accordingly. Everybody together, so there.
Of course, the first Jews in the New World had arrived in the prior century, fleeing the Inquisition. They landed in Mexico, Brazil, and other areas of the U.S. For instance, in the 1580s, Don Luis de Carvalla settled Spanish families on his land, site of northern Mexico's southern Texas. When some settlers were discovered secretly practicing Judaism, things ended very badly. The governor died in prison, his family was tortured, and several burned at an auto-da-fe. But tonight is North America's story, so we begin with 1621.
This first interval from 1620s to around 1820 is the Sephardic period. Mostly Spanish and Portuguese, they settled 6 cities in the east. New York, shout out to New York. Newport, Philly, shout out to Philly. Richmond, shout out to Richmond. Charleston and Savannah, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Sephardim were proud and aristocratic people, carrying the memory of the Iberia's golden age to more primitive America. They were purveyors and merchants, shippers and artisans, well-suited to build the economy of agricultural America. This period is when the first United States synagogue, Touro Synagogue in Newport, was founded, 1763, by Jews from Barbados. It was named for the Isaac Touro, its first rabbi. So in the chat, let everybody know if you have visited Touro, the Touro Synagogue, and if you have any memories, anything that really was, what struck you as something that was memorable. Okay, 4 sons. As we do tonight, those first settlers discussed the 4 sons, looking for parallels between themselves and the traditional archetypes, wise, wicked, etc. The Torah speaks of those 4 sons as the wise one, wicked one, a simple one, and the childlike who can't ask a question. However, the Torah does not speak of a child who cannot sing, so let's do that. And here we go. The anticipation is going to kill me. For some all, some nothing, some know all, some nothing at all. Nobody so much to learn, he studies to discern the Torah's not from big to small. The evil some mocks, the ritual socks, superstition everyone mocks. Simple son just looks and says, say what? But look out for the one who's not asking. He's the one who must be taught, and not just that one. All our children must be taught, and not just that one. All our children must be taught. You are great. You're even going to get better, I know. Jacob went down to Egypt, compelled by the word of God, and sojourned there. A later Jacob went down to America, compelled by the dream of a better life, and sojourned here. Lots of the early settlers were named Jacob. Jacob Meyer, Jacob Davis, Jacob Kaufman, Jacob Marcus, Jacob Levy, Jacob Bloch, Jacob Solomon, Jacob Spiegelberg.
But not John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt.
Why not? So many we won't have time to tell all their stories. The second wave. From 1820 to around 1880, the number of Jews increased sharply from 5,000 to more than 250,000, most of them from Central Europe. This is the German period. The earlier Sephardim stayed in eastern urban areas. It was the German Jews who led the way across the continent from the deep south to too numerous to count tiny outposts in the Midwest and the Pacific coast. Now you on your own, read the next paragraph, where you are. Germans who had success as traders and artisans search for new lives, primarily the economics of the Industrial Revolution. Cheaper man-made goods were starting to undermine those made by Jewish artists, and their customers and source of livelihood, Central European peasants, were dislocated by the increased industrialization of the population, was exacerbating their economic problems. Filling packs, trunks, and baskets with whatever saleable items could be scrapped together, they took to the roadways, following routes of continental expansion by foot, water, and rail. They made their way first to the trading centers and then to the hinterlands in search of new markets. They hoped hard work and luck would let them save enough money to buy a horse and wagon. They dreamt one day they could settle and open a store somewhere. That was a fantasy back in Central Europe. Jews there were denied license to open a sedentary business. Let's sample some state histories. Colorado.
Colorado.
Colorado. All right. Now, Denver was founded in 1859 by merchants and prospectors rushing to mountain gold camps. Those first settlers included at least 10 Jews who gathered on Rosh Hashanah for the first religious services in the city. Soon they organized Congregation Beth Elohim Bamidbar, the House of the Lord in the Wilderness, which received a donation of 10 lots from Denver for a synagogue. In the 1860s, over 20 men formed the Hebrew Burial and Prayer Society, forerunner of B'nai B'rith Lodge and Temple Emmanuel. Like others in the second wave of immigration, most of Denver's Jews were merchants and professionals from Germany.
Colorado's boomtown, Leadville, produced silver worth over $82 million between 1879 and 1889.
That's almost $2 billion in today's cash.
It supported 24,000 people, an opera house, 120 saloons, and 17 barbershops.
And I wouldn't have gone to any one of them.
I know. There were 200 Jews in 2 congregations, a B'nai B'rith Lodge, 23 Jewish-owned dry goods stores, a 40-pupil Talmud Torah. The Purim balls of the Hebrew Ladies Benevolent Association were the highlight of the social season. The largest fortune ever amassed by a Jew in America began in Leadville.
So do you want to guess? This is a person that funds a lot of arts grants, many museums, starts with a G. The answer is?
Guggenheim.
Guggenheim.
G. Meyer Guggenheim, as did the nation's second largest department store chain.
And that's the chain that started the what we currently have, the successor that owns Macy's, Marshall Field's, Filene's, and Kaufman's. That was the May Company. Oregon. So this is
Is that where oregano comes from?
this is the back of the Oregon flag. You don't normally see that. Germans in Oregon show the typical pattern elsewhere. The peddler on the newest frontier, accumulating enough money to establish a retail store, which then either expanded or specialized or became a wholesale supplier for other retail outlets. An exceptional number of merchant pioneers amassed much wealth in just a few years, even while starting with little or no capital. And the story of Louis Fleischer illustrates their hard work and persistence. Louis arrived in New York in 1842 when he was 15. He first went to Philly, where he worked for 5 years for a dealer in horse and cattle. In 1849, he went to Drakesville, Iowa, and became a merchandiser. 3 years later, he started across the Great Plains by ox team. Shout out to all the oxen. He paused in northern Idaho, where he ran a successful store at Orofino Finds. He took stock of goods on the first steamboat to land in Lewiston, Idaho. After weary months of suffering on the ox team, Louis arrived in Albany, Oregon. At 36, he came to Portland, partnering with 2 Germans to buy a general merchandising house. Louis created Fleischer, Mayer and Company in partnership with Jacob Meyer, our first modern Jacob, where the business grew rapidly. They were the largest dry goods wholesaler west of the Mississippi. In spite of the time of great mistrust of public office, sound familiar? Louis was elected in 1870 by a large majority for the Oregon State Treasurer, where he reorganized the entire state's financial system. Just like Louis, the Jews had to cross the desert. Not like Louis, their trip was 40 years. Quaranta, which is the Italian word that quarantine comes from, means 40. So many 40s in scripture represent purification. 40 years of wandering, 40 days and nights of Noah's flood, 40 days of Lent. That's why the original period for quarantines was 40 days. So it was not for medical reason that quarantine was 40 days, it was biblical inspiration. Montana, you look like you're from Montana.
Do I look like I'm from Montana?
The first Jewish immigrants arrived in Montana at Alder Gulch following its gold rush in the 1860s. They moved later to Helena and organized the state's first Jewish community. Once the last chance Gulch strike played out, Jewish residents moved to Butte, Montana's next boomtown.
I hope they can see me.
Butte's Jews formally organized in the 1880s and supported 3 congregations, Reformed, Conservative, and Orthodox. What a surprising trio. The first mayor of Butte was Jewish, Henry Jacobs. However, it took some time for Jews to settle in Billings. It's currently 3 times the size of Butte. City records do mention a few Jewish merchants in 1864, but they apparently traveled on. Later residents remembered no one who settled before 1900. For the next 50 years, the only organization was a small B'nai B'rith chapter holding services only on high holidays. Butte currently only has 30 Jews.
Wyoming! Got you first.
Wyoming. Okay, Wyoming's capital, Cheyenne, was established in 1867 by a group of men that included 2 Jews. One of them, Simon Bamberger, became Utah's governor. The Union Pacific Railroad reached Wyoming 1 year later. The German Reformed Jews who came were peddlers and merchants who dealt in clothing, liquor, cigars, and sundry items. They were readily accepted by fellow pioneers. By 1884, there were 11 Jewish-owned businesses. Ernestine Rose, a close friend of Susan B. Anthony, rode up and down the territory on horseback and in stagecoaches campaigning for full equality of women. Buffalo Bill said, if a woman can do the same work that a man can do and do it as well, she should have the same pay. What a radical thought. Ernestine's mission was successful. Wyoming granted voting rights to women in 1869, fully 9 years before it was even proposed in the U.S. Senate. Wyoming's Louisa Gardner Swain was the first woman in the world to vote in full equality with men. Wyoming is still nicknamed the Equality State, and I think that's around the seal over there. Oklahoma!
Oklahoma.
The earliest Jews in Oklahoma, shout out to Oklahomans, were peddlers who traded with native tribes. Beauregard Boggy Johnson moved to Boggy Depot at the end of the stagecoach line. In 1865, he set up business trading with local Indians. Johnson later married a Chickasaw woman. A few other Jewish peddlers in the Oklahoma Indian Territory also married Native American women, since it was the only way for them to acquire property. By 1890, the population of the Oklahoma Territory had about 100 Jews. The first high holiday services were conducted in Oklahoma City, and Oklahoma's first Jewish congregation was established in Ardmore that year. If you look to the left, you can see the Shalom Aleichem oil field outside of Ardmore. At statehood, 17 years later, the population was 1,000. A decade later, it quintupled, and by the late 1920s, doubled again at over 7,500. The first Jewish congregation in Oklahoma was established in Ardmore in 1890. Oklahoma's Jews primarily went to urban areas. Urbanization helped stabilize the community and preserve identity by providing the resources for Jewish life. Unlike many other Western regions, Oklahoma didn't attract many Jewish immigrants directly. Clearly oblivious to its musical theater possibilities, the early settlers resided elsewhere, often for long periods. Unlike those early settlers, let's not miss those musical theater possibilities. Raise a glass to Oklahoma.
Woo-hoo.
Set in the farm country of Claremore, Oklahoma Territory, Oklahoma told the story of a farm girl, Laurie Williams, and her courtship by 2 rival suitors, the sinister and frightening farmhand Judd Fry, and the cowboy who wins her, Curly McLean. The musical boasts many firsts, and I'd like you all to read responsibly. If you've got several people at your screen, alternate and read up to and including the point about the theme song. It's the first musical written by Rodgers and Hammerstein, the most successful songwriting partnership.
It's likely the first Broadway musical about the Wild West.
Oklahoma had the first album featuring an original Broadway musical cast and sold millions of copies of double-sided 78s. The Sounds film track was the first album to be certified gold. Has been continually in print.
Okay, Oklahoma birthed a modern musical with music, book, lyrics, dancing, and staging being completely integrated. Even the dance numbers moved the story ahead, and you have to talk slow. And
Oklahoma received no theatrical awards. Tony Awards weren't even in existence in 1943, but it won the first special Pulitzer Prize given in the arts category.
the title song became Oklahoma's official state song in 1953.
Okay, hopefully you're done. When the government voted to make Oklahoma the state song, one of the Oklahoma legislators said, "How can 2 Jews from New York know anything about Oklahoma?" During the early tryouts, a famous producer, Mike Todd, walked out after the first act and wisecracked, "No legs, no jokes, no chance." And there's the little blow-up of that. Yet, Oklahoma was both a critical and popular success, unprecedented for the time. Oklahoma broke box office records, running for 5 years and 9 months, a record that stood for 18 years until My Fair Lady. Not every theater insider was thrilled.
To interview Arthur Lawrence, book writer of West Side Story.
I think we were all in love with musical theater. And I suppose the groundbreaking musical everybody says is Oklahoma. It's heresy, but I didn't like it very much. I mean, the idea of tap dancing cowboys just seemed to me to be absurd.
I don't know why not. So how many of you have seen the play or the movie? Please let us know in the chat. Okay? And our Seder tonight is almost the anniversary of Oklahoma on Broadway. It was March 31st, so we're a little bit beyond a week away from that anniversary. The show struck a nostalgic chord just when Americans needed it. We were suddenly at war with 3 fascist powers. Oklahoma was about home, family love, and triumph of good over evil, precisely what we were fighting for. Americans longed for a brighter future, just like the early Jewish settlers who came looking for a better life and the promise of freedom. With that, we return to our pioneers. So with the next paragraph, read along with us. The third wave. The wave before 1880 from Central Europe brought a 250,000 Jews. The influx of Jews
following the Germans was the largest.
This third wave brought 2.5 million. They were spurred by pogroms, virulent anti-Semitism, extreme poverty, and much more. We'll explore their story after the meal. For now, we'll dig deeper into the stories of individuals who came to America before them. Okay, just that one paragraph. I want to show you, I have here a guide to the United States for the Jewish immigrant, something that I found on the web. It's about 60 pages of dress, customs, how to handle yourself in various situations. And I mentioned, and also behind us, we've got the Jewish map in Yiddish. So this was 4 immigrants coming from Eastern Europe from this third wave. Near Durango in southwest Colorado, the colorful Sam Samuels, with his flowing mustache and large hat, looked like a stereotypical Western sheriff, shouting orders in Yiddish to his strapling sons. They ran cattle on the open range and built up a good reputation for breaking and training horses. Portland, Oregon.
Oh. As the dry goods store Mayer and Frank in Portland began to prosper, more help was needed, and like many Jewish merchants of today, they brought relatives from the old country. In this case, they brought the Hirsches. Harold Hirsch recalled less fortunate members of the family were brought over, partly because of feelings of sympathy and love, and partly because they could get darn cheap labor that way. The work ethic was so strong that when Harold's father, Max Hirsch, asked to take a few days vacation to accompany friends to Wilhoit Springs, the sharp response was,
"What do you want to take a vacation for? You just came."
This was after 7 years working at the store.
How'd you like to have a boss like that? Abe Mayer was an early PR...
I do. The taskmaster.
Abe Meyer was the early PR man. He stood at the front door as you walked in, greeted you by name, and sent you to the proper salesperson. He knew your buying habits, your bargaining ability, or lack of it, fairly well. He and the salespeople had a code. After saying hello, he called out to the back, "Max, Mrs. Smith is here. Take her down the middle aisle and show her the wood stove. She's interested in new wood stove." The middle aisle meant, "She's a sharp cookie. Watch your buttons. Good when you trade with her." If he said, "Take her down the left aisle," that meant she was a pushover. The guy who met the shoppers knew them well and cued the salesperson, who usually was a member of the family. The front man was very valuable. So these are the plagues of the early settlers. We're not going to dip wine. We're just going to say them. So I'm going to unmute all and say them all together. Try to follow my lead.
Plagues. Government had been fishing for years.
Parody. Fights with Indians were not necessarily attacks by terrorists suffering on the oxygen.
Now, these plagues brought out the taskmasters in Egypt. Were brought upon the taskmasters in Egypt. Remember Egypt. So I want you to, since we're talking about the plagues, I want you to put in the chat, apart from the coronavirus itself, what additional plagues are we currently experiencing? What other things are we currently experiencing for these 2 months? Okay, so now we'll do the plagues, call them out in English and then in Hebrew. Follow along. Blood, frogs, vermin, wild animals, cattle disease, boils, locusts, hail, locusts, darkness, and death of the firstborn. And Dam, Tzvardeya, Hinim, Arav, Deber, Shvin, Barad, Arbe choshech makat bechorot. Okay. So a story.
Don't lick your fingers.
Don't lick your fingers, but use a napkin.
Wash your hands.
I need to
Just
check
into the
something here. Let me see what happens here. What do we have? Okay.
Oh.
Right, okay. A story from biblical scholar, Professor Gary Rensburg, first year in classroom. He taught his students the viewpoint that the targets of the plagues were attacks on the Egyptian gods. Darkness belittled Ra, the sun god. Turning the Nile into blood challenged the water god Hapi. The Egyptian goddess of fertility had the head of a frog, and so forth. When the class tests were returned, one student showed that he remembered the plagues were a tax on the Egyptian gods. So, not all the time do you communicate clearly. Okay, so sing along at home and at your computer screens. We have our next song about the 10 plagues. I just love singing about the plagues, don't you? This is one of my favorite songs.
It's a long intro.
Pharaoh, why won't you let us go? We're in a terrible fix. Our backs are sore, our spirits low, and yet you always say next. For a while we were refined and cool. As Joseph's kin we had a lot of clout. Then a brand new Pharaoh came to rule, and we who once were in, we now were out. So we are pleading, let us go. We now are taking a stand. Moses has promised us land out there beyond your command. So don't say no. What you gonna do when your rivers turn bloody and frogs go bloody? What you gonna do? What you gonna do when the vermin infest you and wild beasts distress you? What you gonna do? Supposing that we say that your cows will all drop and your skin will rot in pus. What you gonna do when the hail comes down? Blame it on us. Next thing the locusts will descend. Darkness will cover your land. Your firstborn will die in the sand. Then maybe you'll understand. You can't say no. Just let us go. You were great. You were great.
Texas!
More stories of the individual pioneers. Texas. Jewish merchants in Waco, Texas, had to adjust their religious practices to fit American customs and law. In 1879, the Jewish owner of the Palace Saloon decided to close his business on Shabbat and open it on Sunday, which was a violation of the local blue laws. The owner saw this as a test case, arguing that observing his own religious Sabbath would be sufficient. Other saloon owners complained, but he made $350 one Sunday, which is worth $8,000 today. And the man was charged with violating local blue laws and fined. Soon after, he closed the saloon on Sundays. Nearly all the Jewish merchants were unable to survive if they closed on Saturdays, forcing them to alter their religious observance. But in other ways, they were well integrated with neighboring religions without giving up their own. Waco's Jews didn't restrict their charity to the Jewish community, often giving money to church building funds. Around 1900, the American Israelite reported there's not a Christian church in the city or county which Waco Jews did not help support.
One of the most colorful and controversial figures in Waco was Gussie Oscar, who arrived in 1905 to play in the orchestra of the Majestic Theater. Gussie conducted an all-female orchestra and later toured the country as a piano player for singer May Irwin. She became the manager of the Waco Auditorium, challenging local laws and social mores with her programs. She confronted local blue laws by showing movies on Sundays. She hosted a lecturer on birth control who spoke to women during the day and men during the evening. She brought in stars like Will Rogers, Harry Houdini, and the Marx Brothers. During the Roaring Twenties, she brought risque plays with sexual innuendo. Irving Berlin's Music Box Review led to the arrest of 20 actresses and Gussie herself for indecency. This led to the closing of the theater since acts no longer would come to Waco. Nevertheless, she stayed in show business, booking events at other theaters and other towns until her death.
Now my favorite sentence in the entire Haggadah. Another place, not much of a different time. Jew Ida was a turn-of-the-century madame in Butte, Montana. She not only cooked the state's best chicken soup, but piously closed her brothel every Yom Kippur.
Oh, how
True story. Another Texas story. Nathan Waldman said behind Kilgore's synagogue was a field where his Christian neighbor kept his horse pastured. The rabbi was dreadfully afraid of the horse, and the horse was not too fond of the rabbi either. One Friday evening, the rabbi took a shortcut across the pasture. The horse took offense and ran towards the rabbi. The rabbi ran towards the synagogue. The horse ran faster. The rabbi ran even faster, proving that when properly motivated, an Orthodox rabbi can outrun a Christian horse. Later on, we're going to read that we are obligated to feel as though we personally have left Egypt. Tonight, I'm asking you to personally feel as though we have left Europe for America, like these people. These aren't random people. These could have been your grandparents, your great-grandparents. Had you been born in another time, these might have been your stories. So I want you, as you're thinking about this, think about the fact that you might have been born, this might have been the life that you would have led. Okay, next.
Meyer Levy was a Union soldier in an occupied Virginia town. He saw a little boy eating matzah during Passover and asked him for a piece. The child ran inside and shouted, "Mother, there's a damn Yankee Jew outside." The mother emerged and, to Meyer's relief, invited Levy to the family Seder. I don't know if it's Levy.
We don't know. Rabbinic conflict. A young Rabbi May was frustrated by congregants who were religiously unobservant. The zeal of business leaders was reserved for business, not religion. Yet they had strong views that spanned wanting to Americanize to staunchly defending tradition. The controversy raged in 1879 when 4 members charged the rabbi with a wild assortment of offenses, such as referring to the married woman in the congregation as ladies of easy virtue, acting as a libertine during a visit to San Francisco, threatening to join the Unitarian Church if the current president was reelected, and so on. A membership committee generally exonerated the rabbi, though they had found that he'd said some indiscreet things about the ignorance of the congregation. He was rehired, but bizarre events terminated an extraordinarily acrimonious tenure. Rabbi May had a history of conflict with a congregant, Abraham Waldman. The rabbi started arguing with him in the middle of town. This time, Waldman lost his temper and knocked the rabbi to the ground. The rabbi drew a pistol from beneath his coat, fired twice, but he missed Waldman both times. Soon May had resigned, the congregation gave him a portion of his salary, and he left Portland. I'll do this one. Okay. A story of a rabbi's son. The father of Eric Weiss came to America in 1878, settled in Appleton, Wisconsin, to become the rabbi of a congregation of 15 German Jews. Here's additional information. Eric and his mother joined their father in 1880, but his father was fired 2 years later. He first moved to Milwaukee, fell into dire poverty, and moved final time to Manhattan, where he only had jobs in the garment industry cutting neckties. His father slid into despair and into ill health, and Eric vowed never to be poor. He launched into show business as a way of staying out of ghetto jobs. It was the first of his many escapes. His stage name, Henry Houdini. Harry Houdini, the world's most famous magician. Surprise song, surprise song.
Everyone can sing along at home.
Everyone can sing along at television land. Okay, this is the story of Passover. They made their riches during an oil boom, so it's appropriate.
Come and listen to my story about the Hebrew slaves. They worked so hard, nearly put them in their graves. But God told Moses to act on his behalf, so he headed off to Egypt where he met the chief of staff.
Pharaoh, that is. Mean guy. Hated Jews.
The first thing Moses said was, "Let my people go, or plagues will come from the heavens to below." But Pharaoh didn't listen, and he scoffed and gave a shrug. So Moses held his staff out, and the Nile turned into blood.
No more drinking water. poor Egyptians.
Old Pharaoh was not one to frighten easily. The plagues would be brought upon him ceaselessly. First frogs, then lice, then flies swarmed all around, but he stuck to his guns and then doubled down.
No redemption for the Hebrew slaves.
5 more plagues the Pharaoh would withstand. Wild beasts spoil, hail, locusts out of hand. Darkness came and covered all the land, but the worst was yet to come by God's great command.
Killing of the firstborn Egyptians, that is.
One night the Jews put lamb's blood on their doors. The angel of death knew just who to ignore. Firstborn males were slaughtered where they slept, and this time Pharaoh knew he must accept
God's command to free the slaves, that is.
Moses led his people far away from Pharaoh's grip. When they reached the Red Sea, he raised his staff and made it split. Pharaoh's army drowned, and the Jews were free and clear, so they cheered with happy tears, then wandered 40 years.
But that's another story for another time. Y'all come back now next year, you hear? Lyrics by Randi Spiegel. Okay, so we're going to skip ahead to Irving Falk, the dapper young gentleman on with a picture. Irving Falk, born in 1918, was a shy, frightened young man fresh off his family's New Jersey farm, and the work he was doing took all of his courage. Since he wanted the people he dealt with to take him seriously, when they asked how old he was, he told them he was 21. That sounded like a sophisticated age to someone who was only 18, and it buoyed his courage. He was not certain they believed him, but nobody questioned him. Irving had to be up by 3 a.m. to help out with the milk route. Milk deliveries would take about 2 hours from 3 to 5 a.m. When his work was done, he went home to get ready for school. We worked 24 hours. We were so busy I didn't even know I was working harder than other people. He was still 18 when he left New Jersey for Texas, where he started a scrap metal business that thrived during Texas's oil boom.
Then there's the story of the a circuit riding moth. I'll say that 3 times fast. Dr. John Elsner, who from 1887 to 1905 traveled on horseback to perform circumcisions in Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Nebraska.
I want to have that guy do my circumcision.
Yeah, me too. Golda Meir lived in Denver for a time. After quarreling with her parents because she wanted to go to high school, at age 14, Goldie Mebovich left Milwaukee in 1912 to join her sister Shana in Denver.
Shout out to Denver.
Golda attended high school until she dropped out to work, first in a department store and later in a laundry. At nightly gatherings at her sister's home, she was introduced to Zionism, world affairs, and her future husband, sign painter Morris Meyerson, Moshe Meir. Golda returned home and finished high school, and in 1915 entered normal school, later the University of Wisconsin, where she married Meyerson and emigrated to Israel in 1921.
The rest is history. Okay, everybody together, read along. Colorado's Brooklyn Society, founded in 1979, holds a party every June for Brooklynites now living in Colorado. Proof of being a Brooklynite is required.
And we have some Brooklynites zooming in with us.
Time for surprise song. Time for surprise song.
Super kosher Manischewitz, matzah ball and Moses. The story of the Exodus, our Seder meal discloses. Reminds us of a life of slaves with not a bed of roses. Super kosher Manischewitz, matzah ball and Moses. Sing along. The Jews were bound in Egypt and were feeling rather low. So Moses went to Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go." Pharaoh said, "Be gone with you," which wasn't very nice. So God commenced a run of plagues, including frogs and lice. Now when a virus comes along that's spreading like a plague, and POTUS and his lackeys have been nothing if not vague, well then we've got to trust the CDC and listen well, which means the Seder story in a crowd we cannot tell. Super bad, transmittable, contagious, awful virus. And if we don't act quick and social distance, it will mire us in a stretch of quarantine that lasts until July. Super bad, transmittable, contagious, awful virus.
The plagues were unrelenting and including hail and boils. Coronavirus striking the Egyptian boys and goyles. Pharaoh gave up separated by at least 6 feet. The Jews want to their freedom, and that's it, come on, let's eat. Super kosher Manischewitz, Pesach during COVID. The story of the Exodus, our Seder meal discloses. Finish the Haggadah quick before the Wi-Fi hoses. Super kosher Manischewitz, Pesach during COVID. So that was the genius of our friend Barry Kling, who combined 2 different parodies, a classic one by Eric Zorn and a more obviously current one by Travis Cox, and then with a couple of additions from Randi. So let's skip to 1914. William Rubenstein opened a kosher butcher shop in Oklahoma City, which became a community gathering place on Saturday nights after Shabbat had ended. Jews from 150 miles away traveled to Rubenstein's store to buy kosher food for Passover.
A Texas example of anti-Semitism. In the early 20th century, the KKK rose to prominence in Houston and the rest of Texas. The weekly Klan newspaper regularly attacked Jews as parasites, only interested in extracting the community's wealth. There are a lot of good Jews in Houston and all around. You find them with tombstones over their heads. Despite the rhetoric, Jews were generally not targets of Klan violence, which usually focused on African Americans. During the Klan's brief era of influence, some Jewish-owned stores had their windows broken. The threat of the KKK, which helped elect Texas governors and U.S. senators during the 1920s, helped to unify Houston's Jews to speak out against the racist, anti-immigrant organization. The rabbi called the Klan cowardly. A true American will not hide behind a mask of any kind. The Jews boycotted businesses advertising in the paper, and within 4 years, the Klan lost local support and the newspaper went out of business.
Lexington, shout out to Oklahomans everywhere. In 1885, Bert Weizenhofer and his wife came to a small town near Budapest. After stopping in St. Louis, they came directly to the territory. It was wild and woolly those days. Everybody carried guns. There were shootings there nearly every night. Like other Middle European Jews heading west, he was secular. There wasn't any religion nearby. They would bring a rabbi for weddings, but that was it. Everybody read together. Bert had a small ranch, but in 1900, he and a German partner opened the territory's first and biggest distillery and saloon. They turned out 70 gallons every day, supplying the area's saloons and brothels. The one thing they ate was what they killed or bought. Bert's son said for dinner, his mother went out back and cut a chicken's head off. The 2 partners financed a bridge that brought patrons from the neighboring town across the river. They charged a nickel if you were walking, a dime on horseback, and a full 2 bits if you were riding a bicycle. The premium was to discourage bikes, which frightened the horses. Skip a paragraph. Mary Rachowski-Kobe was an Orthodox Jew living in Central City in the 1870s. For a time, Mary had kosher meat shipped up the mountain from Denver, but because it usually arrived spoiled, she and her family became vegetarians. California!
California! Hi, Johnny. Hi, Edie.
California!
Hi. I don't know who else is on from California.
If you're from California, put a little hi in the chat window. We've got several Californians.
This one you take down.
Now you have to remove your tape. You take off the sheet.
Oh, the whole
sheet. During the California gold rush, due to the great distance, 120 miles from San Francisco to Mokelumne Hill, you Californians tell me how that's pronounced, near the current El Dorado National Forest, special holiday foods did not arrive as planned. My father told me that Passover was served whenever the matzah arrived. However, Aaron Harris, who lived in Yosemite Park in the 1870s and 80s, wanted to celebrate Passover at the proper time. His matzah was always ordered the previous year from San Francisco, so they would arrive in time for Passover. 2 pioneers.
2 pioneers influenced clothes around the world. Amidst the gold rush to California, Loeb Strauss, who later changed his name to Levi, left his family's fledgling clothing business in New York and traveled to San Francisco in 1853. His dry goods store sold everything miners need: clothes, tents, and tools. He supplied heavy-duty denim to tailors throughout the West, including a Reno tailor named Jacob Davis, originally Jacob Eufus. Jacob reinforced stress points with copper rivets to make durable work pants. When Jacob couldn't keep up with the demand, he partnered with Strauss and obtained a patent with him. Those first blue jeans were so popular, they were rationed during World War II. To save thread, Levi Strauss was forbidden from including the decorative arch on their pockets. They were painted on instead.
Many Jewish merchants established strong ties with local tribes, often learning their languages. But Solomon Bebo's story is unique. He was the first white man to become an Indian chief. I'm not sure that we've even had others since then. I think so, but certainly not Jews. Bebo came from a traditional family. His father was a cantor in Austria. Traveling to America with his brothers, he settled in Santa Fe. Bebo started trading with the local Acoma tribe. Becoming so close to them, he championed them in property disputes with the federal government. He was fluent in Spanish and Querés, the native Indian language. He married an Acoma woman who converted to Judaism. In 1885, the natives elected Bebo the tribe's chief, a position recognized by the U.S. government that he held 4 times. Nevada, Nevada,
you didn't meet
Nevada.
Okay, I'm getting there.
The casinos of Las Vegas have strong Jewish connections. Meyer Lansky, originally Meyer Suchoblansky, one of the most important figures in the development of organized crime in New York, shout out to New York, partnered with Bugsy Siegel. His close association with Lucky Luciano propelled him to the top of mob leadership in America. My grandmother urged me to be the best of whatever I do. Says, if you're going to be a bank robber, be a good one. She actually did tell me that. I have never been a bank robber. He helped kickstart Las Vegas into the nation's vice capital. The city attracted a mob because casinos were an almost inexhaustible cash cow. It's said that he's the inspiration for Hyman Roth in the second Godfather movie. Las Vegas Jewish gangsters achieved a modicum of civic responsibility by later joining synagogues and funding schools. The day school at Temple Ner Tamid, for instance, was named for the mobster Joe Modalitz. So we're about to do Dayenu, and I'd like you to put in the chat your thoughts about the following question. We are experiencing, because of the pandemic, much difficulty, but it's really important to have gratitude. And what do you think now? Who are you grateful for? Essential workers, truck drivers, people that you see in the grocery stores, perhaps a person that you work with or that you used to work with and you can't work with them, you're working by remotely. Also, what are you thankful for? What do you have now that you feel is enough? Dayenu. So, there is a tradition amongst the Persian Jews that during Dayenu, we whip our neighbors with scallions. So we, on your behalf, will turn into Persians. You take 2, I'll take 1. You take 2. Okay. So on the Dayenu, you whip your neighbor there, and so you can use a napkin if you don't have any scallions. Ilu hotzianu mi Mitzrayim Dayenu. Ilu natan lanu et hashabbat Dayenu. Everybody. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Dayenu. Ilu natan lanu et Torah Dayenu. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. I'm not supposed to use that shield. Dayenu. So I heard you next year do this. It's really lots of fun.
For some.
Okay, so our ancestors made their way to the desert, to the various promised lands, Israel or America, and we have another song about the Exodus. So sing along loud. I hope all of you know this song. just got to hurry. Pack your things, cause we're gonna scurry. God will help, there's no need to worry. We'll be on our way. Paint your doors with blood as a warning. Let the angels stray all this morning. Stay inside, be safe until morning when we're on our way. The trip's so long, when we'll walk all the way, but God has promised to guide us. In case the Egyptians resort to foul play, with fire and clouds he will hide us. Dawn is here and Egypt is waking. Pharaoh says, get out, my heart's aching. Mix your dough, don't worry about baking. Some will bake that dough. Now just hurry, better scurry, Pharaoh's letting us go. You sounded great, all of you, all of you. Okay, Dayenu part 2. So all of you call out Dayenu at the proper time. Had he brought us out of Europe and not provided ranches, horses, cattle, and saloons?
Dayenu.
Had he given us ranches and such, but not religious liberty and respect?
Dayenu. Had he given us religious liberty, but not kosher food for Passover? Dayenu. Had he given us kosher food for Passover, but not decent business opportunities? Dayenu.
Had he given us business opportunities of laundering and tailoring to scrap metal and oil rigging and banking, but not salesmanship?
Dayenu.
Had he given us skills to be successful in dry goods, department stores, wholesale and retail, but not the availability of political leadership?
Dayenu. Had he given us the responsibilities and respect that comes with political leadership, but not fearless rabbis?
Dayenu.
Had he given us fearless rabbis that can outrun horses and win Main Street shootouts and moils on horseback, but no professional entertainment? Dayenu.
Had he given us entertainment from Will Rogers to the Marx Brothers, but not faithful Native Americans who trusted us? Dayenu. Had he given us trusting Native Americans, but not the drive to make a living any way we could? Dayenu. Had he given us business seichel, but not gold rushes with needy miners? Dayenu. All of you together. How much more so then should we be grateful to God for the numerous favors that he bestowed upon us? He brought us out of Europe, gave us ranches and horses and saloons, religious liberty, kosher food that sometimes didn't spoil, salesmanship, political leadership, fearless rabbis, entertainers, trusting Native Americans, and business seichel admired around the world. Rabbi Gamliel used to say that whoever does not mention these 3 things on Passover has not fulfilled his duty: the sacrifice of Pesach, the unleavened bread, and the bitter herbs. These are the traditional symbols of Passover. At one seminar that we attended, someone asked, what will we put on our Seder plate to make us remember this year for years to come? What would Rabbi Gamliel, if he was in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, what would he recommend? So put your suggestions in the chat. Pesach, the Paschal lamb, which our ancestors ate during the existence of the temple. For what reason was it eaten? Because the omnipresent passed over the houses of our ancestors in Egypt. Say it is a sacrifice of the Passover unto the Lord, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel and smote the Egyptians. The people bowed and worshipped. Matzah zeh. It's unleavened.
Oh, this unleavened bread, which we will soon eat, yes, soon, really. What does it mean? It is because the King of Kings redeemed our fathers before their dough had time to ferment. They baked the dough into unleavened cakes, where they were driven out without delay, nor had they provisions for their journey.
Moror zeh. You got a big one there.
Yeah, this bitter herb which we eat, what does it mean? The Egyptians cruelly enslaved of our ancestors. They embittered their lives with hard bondage and in all manner of labor in the field. Their labor was imposed with rigor.
Now, I mentioned earlier that in the Haggadah, we are all obligated to see ourselves as though we personally left Egypt. And this is Bechol Dor Vador. Bechol Dor Vador, Chayav Adam Lirot, Lirot et atzmo Keilu Yatsa Mitzrayim. Bechol Dor Vador, Chayav Adam Lirot et atzmo Keilu matzah miMitzrayim. And usually at our seders, we're on opposite ends of the table, so it's really sweet for us to be able to be next to each other. In every generation, each individual should regard himself as though he personally had come out of Europe. As it is said, you shall tell your children on that day, this is on account of what the Eternal did for me when I came out of Europe. It was not only that our ancestors of the Holy One redeemed from poverty and oppression, we too were redeemed with them, as it is said. He took us out to give us a bountiful harvest of opportunity, giving us a land with freedoms our ancestors could only dream of. Raise your glass. Therefore, it is our duty, and say together, therefore it is our duty to thank and praise, pay tribute and glorify, exalt and honor, bless and acclaim the one who performed all these miracles for our fathers and mothers and for us. He took us out of slavery into freedom, out of grief into joy, out of mourning into a festival, out of darkness into a great light, out of slavery into redemption, from poverty to riches, from breaking and training horses to the largest department stores, art fellowships, and philanthropic foundations. We will recite a new song for him. Hallelujah. So we're now going to prepare for the second cup. And there. Okay. So everyone together, I'm going to unmute you, say the Borei Pri Hagafen together, and
I don't have that question.
Okay. Now we are going to wash our hands. About time. So everybody together, you say the blessing while I wash. Baruch.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim.
Happy birthday to you. Happy
Blessed are you,
you,
Lord our God,
Happy
King of the universe, who has sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us to concerning the washing of the hands.
Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us, along with the CDC and Dr. Fauci, concerning the blessing, the washing of the hands.
That was not in mine.
Take the 2 whole matzahs and the broken one and say the following blessing. So get your matzah out. We're about to eat the matzah. And good. So take a piece of matzah, and you'll need a few pieces later on. Everyone with us? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. And I learned this week, this is one time which we are also supposed to lean. So as you eat the matzah,
There's Ricky leaning. I love it.
lean to the left. Now, my favorite part, the bitter herbs. Yay! Okay, take some bitter herbs. Take a piece of maror, horseradish.
I'm going to pick 2 for later. 1. Oh, yum, yum.
Yum, 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 yum. Okay, everybody together. I'll dip it in the charoset. Let's get our charoset ready.
Right. Here's that.
No, just dip it.
No, I got it. Doesn't dip.
Oh, no, it dips. This is the second dipping. For those of you who say, why do we dip twice? You youngsters out there, this is the second dipping.
The first one was parsley. Remember, now this is the second.
I'll do it in English first. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctified us with your commandments and commandments concerning the eating of the bitter herbs. And together in Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat maror. Enjoy. Yum, 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 yum. Now Hillel sandwich. Take another piece of matzah. I'm going to lose my voice because the maror is taking over. Note that Hillel, during the existence of the Holy Temple, he took matzah and bitter herbs and ate them together. Some people add the maror, the charosis as well, which I'm going to do too.
Which I'm going to do, yes.
I don't have much room here. So you have maror and pieces of matzah on either side, and go munch, munch. Another surprise edition. Woohoo! Okay. And you're supposed to eat that. You eat the little sandwich also leaning. There are 7 times that you're supposed to lean. You can ask me later on what they are. 4 cups of wine and 4 of them. Okay, time for surprise song. Robin Schulzen, who wrote all the themed songs that we're doing tonight, wrote another parody, also to Oklahoma, but she created a new one relevant to what we're all experiencing right now.
Just last week.
This is Robin Schulzen. She just wrote this last week, April 2nd, and it was created for this pandemic. So this is Robin Schulzen's voice.
It came to New York City out of China, or sailed into our port upon a cruise. In any case, we now have to design a solution to this major cause of blues. We're low on toilet paper, ventilators, and Purell. Can't get Amazon to send us masks. Our market shelves are empty, all salons are closed as well. Let us back to work is all we ask. Everything's not so great in New York City. Coronavirus brought us to the brink. We've shut down the theaters, schools and parks were next to go. The edict came from Bill de Blasio. We've got to isolate, and that's a pity. Our kids are home and driving us to drink. And now this great metropolis is in the grips of gloom. Just take a look at Times Square, it's as quiet as a tomb. We can't walk the streets together, we'll just have to meet on Zoom. This social distancing has got us low. We've gone about as far as we can go.
I think it's absolutely brilliant. So now we have the other parody that she wrote to this song a couple of years ago for this Seder. So sing along now that you know the melody. We've gotten to the climax of our Seder, and by this time we've learned a thing or two. 'Cause up to now we studied and we prayed for some insight to the history of the food. We've counted out 4 questions and we've looked into 4 songs and seen 5 rabbis never reckoning wrong. We've only drunk 2 wines and we picked our veggies once. Now we're hungry. Look at the clock. What next? What next? Everyone's up to date and now we're ready. We've earned our just rewards, so feed us now. Our appetites are meager and we're in a festive mood. We followed the conventions and we're ready for some food. So all of us will bring it on, we don't want to seem rude. We've gone about as far as we can go. We've gone about as far as we can go. So wasn't that great? Okay, I try to make these Seders topical. Last year was the 75th anniversary of Oklahoma. I actually had most of the Seder written last year when I realized that the refugee immigrants theme would be even more topical, and it was. I urge you to look, Google Seders for You, and you'll find the refugee immigrant Seder that I posted last year. That's why we're celebrating Oklahoma's 75th anniversary 1 year too late. Now a tune that's perfectly relevant to our age-old theme of immigrants yearning for freedom, and this is what we started with.
Far, we've been traveling far, without a home, but not without a star. only want to be free. With carbon clothes, hang on to a dream. Got a dream they've come to share. They're coming to America. They're coming to America. They're coming to America today. My country tis a name, sweet land of liberty. Proudly I sing, proudly I sing.
Okay, this is now time for the festive meal. Normally, this is where we would eat. But you don't want to watch that, do you? Everybody say no.
No.
So we're going to eat later. Hopefully you've already begun to dig in. Now, here's the end of the meal, Safon. Normally, this would be the time to find the Afikomen. Had this been a full Seder, I had originally planned for this year, the Afikomen hunt would have been themed to fit the topic of tonight's Seder. Instead, that hunt and the clues that I developed for that will be done next year, God willing and virologically willing. For tonight, since we haven't eaten yet, I'm going to give you my hint about the Afikomen's location when we are about to eat at the end of the Seder presentation. Don't worry, I have hidden one, and there will be a hunt. Okay, so since we haven't eaten, we won't do Birkat Hamazon, so we're going to skip over that. And now we have chapter 2 of the third wave. From 1880 to 1924, over 2.5 million Eastern European Jews came to America, propelled by persecution and lack of economic opportunity. We will recount their stories in a minute. First, we have to welcome Elijah with some wine.
Don't let him in.
Okay, so let's have some wine, third cup. I think I've got, let's see if this is here. No, okay, come back to me. Okay, so everyone together, as soon as your wine is ready. And so we're going to say the Borei Pri Hagafen together, clear across the country, maybe in Israel as well. I'm going to wait for.
Okay, I'm done.
Ready, Randy, to be ready. And
The monsters are outlined in yellow.
That's
the one that you are. That's the one that you're currently targeting, or that you would target.
Amen. Drink wine, leaning to the left. Blessed are you, Lord of God, King of the universe, creates fruit of the vine, fruit of the vine. Now we welcome Eliyahu. Eliyahu, we've got the cup of Eliyahu. He's got a lot of gold bullion. He's done very well in the gold rush. So we honor Eliyahu Hanavi by having a full cup, not of wine, relative to tonight's theme, full cup of gold bullion. All right, so what now follows is a paragraph that I believe a lot of people are uncomfortable with. Pour out thy wrath. One seminar I attended mentioned the number of times that we pivot between sorrow and happiness. At weddings, we break the glass and then shout, what?
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov. I want to hear you. Many services go from prayer from healing to Shehechianu. In Israel, we have the incredible sadness of Memorial Day, all the soldiers that have been killed and every people killed with the various wars. And then the following day is Independence Day, big celebration, horrors in the street. Here, the Haggadah has one of the fastest pivots most of us experience. From the joy of Eliyahu Hanavi to pour out thy wrath. And we haven't sung Eliyahu Hanavi, so I forgot to do that. So let's sing together. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishvi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimhera Be'amenu, Yavo Eleinu, Imoshiach ben David, Imoshiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi. So we pivot from Eliyahu to pour out thy wrath. Many people are uncomfortable with this, but after what the Jewish communities have experienced historically, the desire for revenge is obviously understandable. So we ask God to destroy all faithlessness, and to punish all wicked and evil, readying the world for the Messiah. Pour out thy wrath. Say this along with me if you are not offended by it and you feel some of the feeling behind it. Pour out your wrath upon communities, states, nations, and kingdoms that do not recognize your name. They have devoured our religion via blue laws, gunfights, discrimination, drive-by shootings, house burnings, thrown bricks, boycotts, hatred, and ignorance. Pour your indignation on those who seek to destroy us. Let your wrath overtake them. Pursue them and destroy them from under the heavens of the Lord. Kick butt. There we go. So now we have the Hallel. Pour the fourth cup. Recite Hallel on your own. All together, just do the English. Not for our sake, O Lord, not for our sake, but for your name's sake give glory, because of your kindness and your truth. The Lord who has remembered us will bless. He will bless the house of Israel. Hallelujah. How can I repay the Lord for all his kind acts toward me? I will raise the cup of salvation and call upon the name of the Lord. Hallelujah. Give thanks to the Lord, all you nations. Praise him, all you nations. Okay, so our cantor taught us this, to say this as fast as you can and to try to get the Kilion Cousteau in time. So by all means do that. And after a while, the Kilion Cousteau, no, we're going to tell them because they won't hear otherwise. Okay. The Kilion Cousteau is going to morph into
Jacques Cousteau.
Jacques Cousteau.
Jacques Cousteau.
Start with Kilion Cousteau and then have some fun. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. Give thanks to the God above gods. Give thanks to the Lord of lords. Are you following along? You all have to do this. You all have to do this. To him who alone does great wonders. To him who made the heavens with understanding. To him who stretched the earth over the waters. To him who gave great heights. The sun to rain by day. The moon and the stars to rain by night. To him that spoke Egypt with the firstborn. And took Israel from among mountains. With a strong hand and outstretched arm. To him who parted the Red Sea. Caused Israel to pass through it. Through Pharaoh and his host of the Red Sea. To him who led the people through the wilderness. To him who spoke their kings. Mighty kings. King of the Amorites, King of Bashan, gave their land as an inheritance. Inheritance to Israeli servant, who remembered us in low state, released us from the foes, who gives food to all creatures. There we go. Or as Bart Simpson would say, Kilion Cousteau.
I don't know.
Whatever. Okay. Chapter 3 of the third wave. This huge wave of immigration from 1880 to 1924 most likely includes the grandparents and great-grandparents of most of us here. Without their brave courage and sacrifice, it's difficult to tell what American Jewry would look like today. Even more certainly would have died in Europe in the Holocaust had they not come here in America. So in the chat, if your grandparents or your great-grandparents came during this third wave, spanning 1900 from 1880 to about 1920s, mid-1920s, tell us that and tell where they came from and what year they came, if you happen to know. And I urge you, as keepers of the stories of your own family, to find out something about your grandparents and preserve that and teach that to your children and grandchildren. There's an apocryphal story, I think it's apocryphal, about my own grandfather. He was walking through the woods somewhere and he saw some money on the ground. It was Shabbat. He couldn't touch the money, but he wanted the money. So he dug a hole, he kicked the money into the hole, and he covered it. And then after Shabbat, he went and picked it up.
Wow.
He had a lot of jobs. He was a machine shop guy, grocery store. During the Depression, he went door to door selling pictures of Roosevelt. He sold condoms. And my grandma was a cigarette girl in a cabaret. And if you can picture our grandma, it's hard to imagine that she would be a cigarette girl. Okay, because the number of immigrants was so large, there was a backlash from the influx, referencing last year's Seder. For context, America's current foreign-born population is between 3 to 4%. Due to immigration that started in the 1900s, that number had become 10%. The Immigration Act of 1924 placed huge restrictions on immigration. It was the most stringent U.S. immigration policy up to that time, basing entry on racial and national quotas. Those coming from Eastern Europe and Africa were the most affected. Fourth cup. Fourth cup. So the blessing over the wine. I'm going to unmute you.
But we don't drink yet.
We don't drink it yet. We don't drink it yet, but we say the prayer. All together. Baruch atah Amen. Don't drink it yet. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, for the vine and its fruit, and for the produce of the field, for the beautiful and spacious land which you gave to our fathers as a heritage to eat of its fruit and to enjoy its goodness. Have mercy, Lord our God, on Israel, your people, on Jerusalem, your city, on Zion, the abode of your glory, on your altar and your temple. Rebuild Jerusalem, the holy city, speedily in our days. Bring us there and cheer us with its restoration. May we eat its fruit and enjoy of its goodness. May we bless you for its holiness and purity, and grant us happiness on this feast of Matzot. For thou, O Lord, are good and beneficent to all, and we thank you for the land and the fruit of the vine. Everybody say, Amen.
Amen.
And drink.
I want to add that I know Murray's speaking very rapidly to get through this Seder. You understand, most of the time we start at 6 o'clock. So we're starting in, an hour later because of people like on the West Coast. So he even skipped some parts. So when you get a chance, just really read the whole Haggadah on your own. But this is why we're going so quickly, because it's already, 10 to 9.
Okay, Nirtzah. The Seder now concludes The Seder now concludes. Yeah, right. According to Halakha. Yeah, right. Complete in all its laws and ordinances. Yeah, right. Just as we were privileged to celebrate it tonight, so we may be granted to perform it again, God willing, without the pandemic. O God, who dwells in the heights above, established us as a countless people once again, speedily guide Israel as a redeemed people to the land of Zion with song. Now, we have another little tradition. On the Seders For You site, you can pick up and print two-sided these El Al paper airplanes. And it's got Charlton Heston leading the ancient Israelites to freedom. And you fold those up into a paper airplane. Show us the paper airplane. Here we go. And so what it looks like, you've got the Charlton Heston on one side. Hold it like this. Don't hold it flat. It won't fly like that. You have to put the wings out.
I'm not a pilot.
There you go.
What do I know?
So there's the wings here, Charlton Heston, and you got the Israelites, the teeming Israelites, and El Al Airlines on the side.
I don't think anyone's
So it's lots of
flying
fun.
now. I don't think anyone's flying now.
They're not flying now, that's true. And so during Lashana Haba'ah, use that. Let me switch over, and so you can sing Lashana Haba'ah. Okay, so sing. Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim, Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim, Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim, Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim Habnuya. And now, Yerushalayim may be sent together there next year. May that year bring peace, all war should cease, and all lives be filled with joy and cheer. Yerushalayim every night will seek the big and vine. Christian, Muslim, Jew, in friendship true, and we'll toast the lions with some wine. We know we belong in this land. We can live side by side, hand in hand. And when we say, Lashana Haba'ah, we're only saying next year in Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim, Habirah. And when we say, Lashana Haba'ah, we're only saying next year in Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim, Habirah, Yerushalayim, Habirah. Now, you may think, those of you who've never been to one of our seders,
that we're crazy.
You may
You'll be
think, you may think, actually, let me show us. You may think that we did extra special stuff here because we have 100 people on the line. No, we do this sort of thing every single year. But now, something we don't do every year. Sorry. Yeah, wait for it.
Ooh, oh, yes.
Oh, Corona, you're a bitch, and you destroyed our year. Now we can't go roam. We must stay home and watch the whole first season of Cheer. Oh, Corona, you are such a bad attention whore. Oh, Corona, you're like, look at me. I'm on TV while the nation's puking on the floor. You want us to stay quarantined until we get a freaking vaccine. And when we scream, oh, we're all gonna die. We're only saying we hate your guts. Oh, Corona, oh, Corona. God, Y-C-O-R-O-N-A. Oh, Corona.
Oh, his lungs are great.
That's true. Okay, finally the fourth wave. Now we're going to talk about Jews, people of Jewish heritage that came from Russia. I know of at least one of our friends is in this category. So those of you who have heritage that came from Russia, that arrived in America during this fourth wave, please indicate when you and your family came and where they came from. Save Soviet Jewry and the era of the refuseniks. Following American activism to free Jews in Russia, in 1988, nearly 19,000 Soviet Jews were granted permission to emigrate to the United States. Some 40 to 60,000 came in the years spanning the end of the Soviet era, to 1991, and perestroika through 1995. That's just 4 years. This fourth wave from Russia now totals nearly 700,000 people. Many were noted scientists and engineers who suffered discrimination and very good job prospects at home, causing the famous brain drain. Russian immigrants have a higher rate of university education than both US natives and the foreign-born. So now we say on the second night, it's the Pesach sacrifice, and a list of events that happened only on the second night are in the traditional one. We're not going to list that in the interest of time. Read or sing Ki Lo Na'eh on your own. And also on the second night, we start counting the Omer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer hayom yom echad la'omer. So this is the first day between Pesach and Shavuos, and that we beginning to mark that on the second night of Passover. So now we have ending songs. No. So the traditional ending songs are based on German folk songs from the 15th and 16th century. Echad miudeyan adirhu, yivnei beito b'karo, bimhera, b'yameinu v'karo, el b'nei, b'nei beitcha b'karo. Finish on your own. You're on your own for these. The traditional celebrations save the best songs for last. We've had them all through the Seder, but we do have one more parody. This is the last traditional song, and you can join us. And so our tradition at our Seder table, for Gadya, sorry, hold on. This is in the wrong.
No, that's right.
No. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
We have one more parody and then the final song. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. So this is one final song from Robin Schulzen. It's a very sad song, very sad song. Poor kid is dead, poor small kid is dead. The one that father bought for 2 Susie. What got him was the cat, then the dog came after that. The troubles that ensued were rather grim. Then came the stick, which fire burned real quick.
The water quenched the flame, ox slaked his thirst.
Then slaughter ends his tail, and it leaves a bloody trail. Ox, angel, butcher, all of them seemed cursed. Oh, kid. Thank you so much, Robin Schulzen. So, what I started to say, we have a Gadya. There's a leader in community chorus version. We want you all to sing along, and I hope you're already out there. So, as an example, when I say one little goat, you go,
Mama.
and if we go, came a little cat, you go,
Meow.
meow. So do the animal sounds, and we'll
have some cameos.
and we'll have some cameos. Gadya, Gadya, one little goat
Mama.
that my Abba bought.
Where's Barry?
Okay. Oh, I think I know what happened.
Hold on.
I'm sorry. Now I understand what was happening.
You gotta unmute.
No. I forgot to do this. Okay.
Oh.
It's fine. It works. Okay, let's do it again. Gadya, Gadya, one little goat
Mama.
that my Abba bought.
Thanks, Dad.
There we go. For 2 gold coins. Gadya, Gadya. And then there came a cat
Meow.
that ate my little goat
Mama.
that my Abba bought.
Thanks, Dad.
With 2 gold coins. Gadya, Gadya. And then there came a dog that bit the little cat
Meow.
that ate the little goat
Mama.
that my Abba bought.
Thanks, Dad.
With 2 gold coins. Gadya, Gadya. And then there came a stick that hit the little dog that bit the little cat
Meow.
that ate the little goat
Mama.
that my Abba bought.
Aw, thanks, Dad.
With 2 gold coins. Gadya, Gadya. Then there came the fire that burned the little stick that hit the little dog that bit the little cat
Meow.
that ate the little goat
Mama.
that my Abba bought.
Thanks, Dad.
With 2 gold coins. Gadya, Gadya. And then there came some water. All right.
Near the water.
Somebody needs to be, okay. Oh, right. Okay, that's all right. That put out the fire, that burned the stick, that hit the little dog, that bit the little cat,
Meow.
that ate the little goat,
Mama.
that my Abba bought.
Thanks, Dad.
With 2 gold coins. Gadya, Gadya. And then there came an ox.
Moo.
That drank up all the water.
I don't hear her.
She's not unmuted. That put out the fire.
Ouch.
That burned the stick. That hit the little dog. That bit the little cat.
Meow.
That ate the little goat.
Mama.
That my Abba bought.
Dad, you're the best.
With 2 gold coins. Gadya, Gadya. And then there came a shochet that slaughtered the ox.
Moo.
very, very, very
That's a
relaxed,
sexy cow.
relaxed ox
Move.
that drank up all the water, that put out the fire,
Ouch.
that burned the stick,
Whack.
hit a little dog,
Ruff, ruff.
that bit the little cat,
Meow.
that ate the little goat, that my Abba bought
Thanks, Dad.
2 gold coins. Gadya, Gadya. Everybody together. And then there came the angel of death. Boo! Who started the shochet? Who started the cop, the ox?
Moo!
That drank up all the water. Go, 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 go. That put out the fire.
Ouch.
That burned the stick. That hit the little dog. That bit the little cat. That hit the little goat. Yeah, my Abba bought.
Thank you, Dad.
2 gold coins. Gadya, Gadya. Everybody together. And then there came our God. Yay! Who killed the angel of death. Boo! Who slaughtered the shochet. Chop! Who slaughtered the ox.
Boo!
That drank up all the water. That put out the fire. Ouch! That burned the stick. Whack! They hit the little dog. They bit the little cat. They ate the little goat. They're my Abba bought.
Toda rabba, Abba.
With 2 gold coins, everybody together. Gadya, Gadya. Yes, so now we get to eat. Now, what was I going to have here? Okay, so. We get to eat. But what about the Afikomen hunt, I hear you ask?
What about the Afikomen hunt?
I hear you ask.
Okay, now you hear.
I did hide an Afikomen, and it fits tonight's format. Since the Seder is being held virtually, I hid our Afikomen on the web. Go find it.
Can you give them a hint?
You want a hint?
I don't know. I don't need a hint.
You want a hint?
I think they need a hint.
You need a hint. Okay, a clue, really?
A clue.
All right, okay. The Afikomen is hidden on one of my websites. The first person to notify me exactly where they found the Afikomen gets big bragging rights and will be written up in my list of all-time Seder stars. It's hard for you to see this. It shows who found the Afikomen each year going back only 26 years. That's when I first started keeping records. So you get a lot of bragging rights if you get written on this list. So it's been a very unusual and strange year. I hope we've helped you honor a bit of tradition, having fun while learning. May we all pray for a speedy recovery from this outbreak. We miss you all. I hope we're back together very soon. All of you, stay well. And now let me go back to this and here. And then, okay. So, hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for joining. For next year, if you want to do any of these Seders that I've done over the past several years, Google Seders for you. I'm now going to unmute you all and be kind to other people. If you want to chat, use the chat. If you want to shout out something, wait for other people to finish talking, and then we'll see what happens.
Thanks, Sarah.
Great Seder, thank you.
Great Seder, thank you. Sameach from Seattle. Thank you.
Mary and Randy.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. Who's the person whose parents came from Monastir?
What was that?
Marsha, your parents came from Monastir.
Hi. Oh, my in-laws, actually.
And are they Romagnot?
They're, I don't know what that means, but they're Sephardic.
They're Sephardic, they're not Romagnot.
I don't think so. I heard that word before.
Because my father came from Greece and he was Romagnot.
Oh. Well, they were wonderful. It passed now, but they were.
Thank you, Murray and Randy.
I was just
You're safe.
Dan and Bob and Steve,
they're right there.
but I still haven't seen them.
Thank you, Murray. Nice Seder.
back, everyone.
There's Steve. He sits right there. I just there's Bob and Dan right there.
Thank you all. Now we're going to eat.
Okay, everybody.
Which
Look for the Afikomen.
Yeah, like 2 hours. Yeah.
So I will leave the channel up. If you want to continue to chat with each other, you're certainly welcome to. I will have you will all be unmuted, but we're going to go into our kitchen and begin to eat. So I will leave this up. If you want to continue to chat by the microphone, that's fine with me.
Or chat.
Love you guys.